Post-1453, the Eastern Mediterranean functioned as a volatile economic network graph, where wealth flowed along predictable trade vectors across the sea lanes. Positioned at the center of this graph was the Venetian Bailo in Constantinople. While titled a diplomat, he acted as a highly embedded intelligence node. Venetian strategy relied on the possession of asymmetrical information. The Republic used market conditions, crop yields, and troop movements as primary weapons, often deploying this knowledge weeks before its rivals. To maintain this advantage, the Bailo was mandated by the Venetian government to build an informal espionage network that reached across the Ottoman capital. This apparatus recruited from several populations: banished citizens, transient foreign merchants, and their local associates. These operatives placed deep cover moles inside the Ottoman bureaucracy and the imperial arsenal in Galata to monitor the Sultan's shipbuilding capabilities. The Venetian state functioned as a corporate organism. The Baili were its biological sensors, extracting raw environmental data to allow the Republic to front-run the Mediterranean economy. The physical processing center for this incoming data was the Vigna di Pera, the Venetian embassy located in the suburbs of Galata. A large perimeter wall protected the complex, separating public diplomatic spaces from the secure private quarters of the secretarial staff and the Janissary Guard. Inside, secretaries aggregated disparate streams of raw intelligence, compiling updates on regional grain prices, Ottoman troop mobilizations, and treaty compliance. This map illustrates how Venice utilized local data. Capturing regional scarcities at the Constantinople node allowed the Republic to execute economic arbitrage. Once routed toward the lagoon, Venice secured a weeks-long lead, acting on economic shifts before competitors. Maintaining this apparatus created a heavy financial burden for the Bailo. They frequently borrowed from the very Venetian merchants their network was designed to protect. The Vigna di Pera was a self-funded, heavily fortified data processing center, engineered to provide the Republic with a consistent temporal advantage in global trade. Collecting the data was only the first step. This pipeline remained vulnerable during the physical transit of intelligence from Constantinople back to the lagoon. Every dispatch faced environmental threats, specifically interception by Ottoman privateers or rival European naval forces patrolling the sea lanes. To secure the pipeline, Venice engineered a closed-loop cryptographic network. They protected data transit with mathematics, rather than relying solely on the strength of their hulls. Inside the Bailo's quarters, secretaries translated raw intelligence into ciphertext before sealing the dispatches in wax. These encrypted pouches traveled on the Mudde, state-sponsored merchant shipping convoys that acted as the physical carrier wave for the Republic's intelligence. The galleys maintained a high pace across the Mediterranean to minimize the window of exposure to hostile forces. If a ship was boarded, the crew could surrender the silk and spices, but they were required to keep the cryptographic protocols intact. Even if a rival state intercepted the pouches, the stolen data remained unreadable. Competing empires lacked the institutional decryption infrastructure required to parse Venetian ciphers in an actionable timeframe. An interception meant a loss of physical cargo, but the Republic's encryption ensured that no intelligence reached its rivals. When the galleys reached the lagoon, the data entered the administrative heart of the Republic, the Doge's palace. The inner chambers of this building functioned as the centralized decryption server for the entire Venetian Empire. This grid demonstrates the mechanics used by Venetian state cryptographers. They applied polyalphabetic substitution ciphers to translate incoming dispatches back into raw text. Through this process, pages of intercepted ciphertext resolved into structured financial data, grain shortages, revised troop numbers, and shifting tax rates. This newly decrypted intelligence was pushed immediately to the inner circles of the patrician class, specifically the full college and the Senate. Armed with exclusive information, the Senate formulated trade policies and adjusted tariffs to manipulate regional markets. This centralized decryption allowed Venice's governing bodies to act on market shifts weeks before their competitors realized the data existed. The primary threat to a closed-loop data network comes from within, through internal corruption and domestic espionage. To insulate the state against this, Venice relied on the Council of Ten, an autocratic internal security protocol established to police the patrician class. They operated with a broad jurisdictional mandate to preserve the government from overthrow and manage the city's domestic intelligence network. In 1539, this protocol was strengthened by the state inquisitors. This three-judge tribunal could bypass standard legal channels to conduct secret trials with a low standard of proof. The physical hardware for this domestic surveillance was scattered across the city in the form of the Bocche dei Leoni, or lion's mouths. These stone reliefs functioned as anonymous drop boxes where citizens acting as informants could slide handwritten reports of illegal activities directly into the state's hands. The council investigated these reports to filter out personal grievances and verify credible threats to state security. The Council of Ten functioned as a lethal firewall, utilizing domestic espionage to guarantee the operational security of the Republic. The final node in this network was the Venetian arsenal, the largest industrial complex in early modern Europe. The arsenal's most valuable asset was its intellectual property, the standardized ship hull blueprints. The mass production of warships at the arsenal relied on these proprietary architectural designs remaining secret. While a stolen galley represented a loss of property, a shipwright secretly sketching a hull design for a foreign power represented a threat to the state's structural integrity. The Council of Ten enforced operational security through swift, silent executions, carried out without public spectacle to protect industrial secrets. This network integrated the entire Venetian system. Data flows from the Baili node in Constantinople securely across shipping lanes to the Doge's palace, informing the arsenale's industrial output. A lethal security perimeter surrounded the lagoon, protecting the Republic's internal processes. This system of data acquisition and internal security functioned with consistent efficiency from the 14th century until the Republic fell to Napoleon in 1797. Venice sustained its maritime empire by engineering a system that weaponized raw intelligence, insulated its data network through mathematics, and defended its industrial secrets with ruthless paranoia.